For more on all this, on the U.S. economy, Nichoal Economides, professor of economics at the Leonard Stern School of Business, NYU. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining us this evening. This latest jobs report.
Great seeing you, friend, Phil.
This latest jobs report was a little bit lighter than I guess they expected, which in translation is good news, because I guess that's what we were looking for. What do you think?
I think that the jobs report and various other indicators show that the economy is slowing down, and that also means that the inflation is going to be lower in the next couple of months, and most likely from now on, the Fed is not going to make any more interest rate increases, and in fact, it might be forced to do a decrease within the next 3 months.
You know, you talk to 10 people, you get 10 different probably answers to this, but originally the plan was for this soft landing. Some people worry that the landing is not soft enough and they're going to have to raise rates and things will overheat. And then there's another group that thinks it's going to be perhaps, you know, closer to the end of the world, economically speaking, that they would raise too much and cause the market and the economy to crash. And then there's a small group, I think, that are aiming for the soft landing. Which one is it now?
Well, it depends month by month how the expectations get adjusted. Right now, it generally looks like a soft landing, although there is a possibility that the savings that people have accumulated from the time of COVID and Trump's handout and later on Biden's handout, that this cumulative amount of money in savings, that by Christmas, it will start getting exhausted. And then demand is going to fall more than expected, and then we have a not so soft landing. But it's difficult to predict. There are too many variables here, and we have a very steep increase in interest rates, but also after an unprecedented long period of very low interest rates.
Right, and let me, I guess, follow up with that. A lot of people who claim to be experts will say that, oh, if the 10-year Treasury bill goes past 5%, that's terrible. But if it's too low, then that's not good either. So here we are, roughly 4.5%, 4.6%. And in your experience or analysis, what is a healthy number that we need to be at so that we're not too hot and we're not too cold?
I wouldn't put too much credence in any particular number. I think that the models that we have were not made for such abrupt changes as the ones we have been experiencing the last 2 years. So I would the predictions are not going to be great. They're not going to be accurate. They're not going to be the ones from which we can get reliable results. I'm afraid that in this particular economy, we have to look at new data every week, every month, and see how we can adjust our expectations.
But Professor, if that's the issue, and we're trying to plan for retirement, or you're trying to invest for you know, next year, or maybe you want to buy a house, I mean, all these things have an impact on people's and businesses' everyday lives, especially when it comes to planning for next year. We have to make an educated guess at some point. I mean, let me just start with housing. I'm sure you, as others, are surprised how strong it's been.
Yes, it has been very strong, despite the very high mortgage rates that we have seen.
But that said, does the prices have to come down, which would help with the affordability issue that a lot of people have complained about this past year?
Well, I mean, if we look a bit forward, like 6 months, 9 months, a year, the Fed for sure is going to decrease interest rates, and then mortgages are also going to fall. Mortgage rates are also going to fall. So I would just wait for a few months in terms of buying, maybe rent for a while, and things are going to be much nicer in 6 to 9 months. And in terms of the 401k and the long-run investments, it's better to stick with a plan that you have for long-run investments and not to go in and out of the market ever so often, because you cannot time it well.
I heard some folks today talk about inflation. Of course, that's kind of how we got to where we are right now. And a lot of people are predicting that inflation will come back after the holidays. I'm talking about Q1 of 2024, and that's where the Fed will find itself in a quandary, if you will. Do you believe in that particular scenario where we don't raise rates, the economy heats up again, and then we have this inflation problem at the beginning of 2024?
It's hard to say. I don't see this as very likely. At the same time, I think a lot depends on how much savings people have of the accumulated savings since the pandemic and the two handouts, big handouts by the government. So it will depend on how much money they have at hand. We have already seen that people don't have so much money at hand anymore, and they are buying on credit. So the more they're buying on credit, the less heated the economy will become, and the less likely that inflation is going to make a comeback.
Yep. Speaking of credit, I have to ask you this. The U.S. government, we like the credit. It's been a part of sort of the DNA of this country for some time now. Some people are saying that you've reached the maximum of where the credit should be given, and that's kind of where we got to where we are today, which some people worry that we're not going to see people buy our bonds, which funds our government. In fact, there's some discussion, and it's unresolved, that in the middle of November, we could still be at a budget impasse.
Well, I'm not sure how it's going to go in Congress, and that's kind of very hard to predict because of the political fights involved. But I think that I wouldn't worry too much about a shutdown of the government. If it's relatively small, if it's relatively short, like few weeks, I don't think things are going to fall apart in the United States because of a shutdown of the government. So I wouldn't worry about that. But generally speaking, because we have had these shutdowns before, we never saw a big increase in interest rates or any credit event or something like that because of shutdowns of the US government. So I wouldn't worry about it. See it in a different way, the credibility of the US bonds is so high that if it falls, then we are close to the end of the world. If I can put it that way.
Professor, we're supposed to end it on a positive note. I thought we're coming up against the weekend.
If it falls, I don't think it's going to fall.
Okay.
I am confident it's going to be okay.